If you ever want to win a big pot in Hold'em, you're often going to have to try and set a trap for your opponents, especially if your opponents happen to be good players. Most good players won't go broke in a typical hand unless they either have a strong hand themselves or you've done a good job in fooling them. There are several ways to set a trap, and in this tip, we're going to look specifically at how you can set traps with the American Airlines Pocket Rockets, or aces as they're known. Smooth calling with pocket ace before the flop can be a deadly trap, and there are several things to consider when attempting this play. A smooth call describes an action where an opponent raises, and rather than re-raise, you just call the bet. Using this play allows you to trap your opponent in several ways. One, if another player at the table finds a strong hand, he may make an aggressive pre-flop raise, figuring that since you only called, that he only needs to worry about the first raiser. When it gets back to you, it's time to pounce back at him with an aggressive re-raise. You can also trap your opponent after the flop. For example, if the flop comes king 7-3 and your opponent happens to have king queen, chances are you're going to beat him for a big pot since you'll figure that he has the best hand. By smooth calling with the aces before the flop, you conceal the strength of your hand, which often turns into extra bets later. The other key benefit to slow playing the aces sometimes is that it will trap opponents that wouldn't otherwise lose a penny. For example, let's say that a player raises and you make a re-raise with aces. If someone behind you happened to pick up ace-king, he's probably going to fold his hand in the face of a raise and a re-raise. If he doesn't, well, he's a bad player anyway, and he's probably going to go broke soon enough. When you smooth call, though, any player with ace-king is going to call one raise before the flop for sure. Now, if you're lucky enough to hit a flop like ace-7 deuce or king 8-3, your opponent will be completely trapped in this hand. In both cases, he's likely to have a strong enough hand to play for all his chips, and in both cases, you'd have them all but dead. Once your opponents catch on to the fact that you sometimes smooth call with aces, that'll actually help you in other ways as well. For example, if later in the game you decide to call a raise with 5-6 suited, hoping to see a cheap flop, a player may now have newfound respect for your smooth call and might not re-raise with a hand that he might otherwise have. The beauty of it all is that even when people know that you use this play, there's little defense against it. In fact, if your opponents now think that you do it regularly, that's going to open up bluffing opportunities for you when the flop comes ragged. I mean, they saw you smooth call with aces once, and that may stick in their minds for a long time, even though you may not do it again the entire session. I must warn you, though, that there are some dangers in slow playing aces before the flop. You're going to get them beat more often. The key thing you should focus on is not how often you win with aces, but how much money you win when you do. When you get to a flop with aces after a smooth call, you need to proceed with a little bit of caution. For example, if a flop comes jack-jack-4, there's absolutely no reason to get fancy here. If your opponent has trips, you're just dead meat. The last thing you want to do is set a trap with aces and then go broke after falling into your opponent's trap. When the board gets scary, play your aces carefully.